I'm Sarah Matthews, 28, a marketing coordinator from Denver who thought I'd found my perfect family when I married Jake. After 3 years of trying to conceive, that precious double line finally appeared on the pregnancy test. I clutched it to my chest, tears streaming down my face as I planned the perfect way to tell our families. But 15 minutes later, my phone exploded with congratulations. My mother-in-law, Linda, had somehow found out and announced my pregnancy on Facebook before I could even tell my own parents. The betrayal cut deeper than I imagined possible, but what I discovered about Linda's crumbling marriage would give me the perfect opportunity for justice. Sometimes the tables turn in the most unexpected ways. If you've ever felt violated by family boundaries, subscribe for more stories of healing and truth. The positive pregnancy test was still warm in my hands when my phone started buzzing. At first, I thought it was Jake calling back. I'd hung up on him mid-sentence when I saw those two pink lines. Too overwhelmed to speak, but it wasn't Jake. It was my sister, Emma. Sarah, oh my God, congratulations. I just saw Linda's post on Facebook. I'm so happy for you. My blood turned to ice. What post? The one about you being pregnant. She's so excited to be a grandmother. Wait, you did know she was posting about it, right? I couldn't breathe. With shaking fingers, I opened Facebook, and there it was, Linda's post from 12 minutes ago, already garnering dozens of likes and comments. The post that would haunt me forever. I'm beyond thrilled to announce that my wonderful daughter-in-law Sarah is expecting. Jake and Sarah have blessed our family with the most amazing news. I'm going to be a grandmother. I just can't contain my excitement. This baby is already so loved. Hashtag blessed grandma, hashtag baby news, hash family. The comments were pouring in. My coworkers, my college friends, distant relatives, everyone was congratulating me on news I hadn't even had the chance to process myself, let alone share. My own mother had commented, "Why didn't you tell me first, honey?" I had to find out. On Facebook, the hurt in those words made my chest tighten. I scrolled through the responses, each one feeling like a knife twist. My best friend Melissa had written, "Can't wait to meet the little one." My boss had commented about maternity leave policies. Jake's college buddies were making jokes about sleepless nights. Everyone was reacting to my news, my moment. My baby and I was just a bystander watching it unfold. When Jake finally called back, I was sobbing so hard I could barely speak. "Sarah, what's wrong? Are you okay? Is the baby your mother?" I managed between gasps. She posted about the pregnancy on Facebook. Everyone knows. Everyone knows before I could tell them myself. There was a long pause. "What do you mean she posted about it?" "I mean exactly what I said, Jake," she announced. "Our pregnancy on Facebook 15 minutes after I told you. My own mother found out on social media. How could she do this to me? Sarah, I'm sure she didn't mean any harm. She's just excited." "Don't." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Don't you dare defend her right now. This was supposed to be our moment. We were supposed to call our parents together, tell them in person, make it special. Instead, I'm finding out about my own pregnancy announcement from my sister calling to congratulate me. Maybe she thought we'd already told everyone." The weakness in his voice, the automatic defense of his mother, it made my stomach turn. This wasn't the first time Jake had minimized his mother's boundary violations, but somehow this felt different. This felt like the moment that would define everything that came after. She knew Jake. She knew we hadn't told anyone yet because you literally just found out 5 minutes before she posted. She stole this from me. She stole one of the most important moments of my life. I ended the call and sat in my bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test through my tears. The joy I'd felt just 30 minutes earlier was completely gone, replaced by a hollow ache that seemed to expand with every new comment notification on my phone. This should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something much darker. I found myself staring at our wedding photo on the mantle, the one where Linda stood beaming between Jake and me, her arms possessively wrapped around both of us. At the time, I thought it was sweet how enthusiastic she was about welcoming me into the family. Now, 3 years later, I could see the signs I'd missed or maybe chosen to ignore. Linda had been involved in every aspect of our wedding planning. Just trying to help, she'd said when she booked the florist without asking me. I want everything to be perfect for you too. When I gently suggested we might want to choose our own flowers, she'd gotten teary-eyed and said she was just so excited to have a daughter she'd never had. Jake had given me that look, the one that said, "Please, don't upset my mother," and I'd backed down. The pattern had continued throughout our marriage. Linda had a key to our house for emergencies, but used it to drop off casseroles and rearrange my kitchen. She'd shown up uninvited to our anniversary dinner because she happened to be in the neighborhood. She'd posted photos of our vacation to Mexico before we'd even gotten home, tagging us and sharing our private moments with her 800 Facebook friends. Each time, Jake had the same response. She means well. She's just excited. She loves you like a daughter. And each time, I'd swallowed my discomfort and tried to be understanding. I'd grown up with emotionally distant parents who rarely showed affection, so Linda's enthusiasm had felt like love. Even when it made me uncomfortable, but now, sitting in my bathroom clutching a pregnancy test while strangers on Facebook celebrated my news, I realized I'd been systematically trained to accept the unacceptable. Linda didn't love me like a daughter, she treated me like a possession, something that belonged to her through Jake. I remembered our first Christmas as a married couple. I'd spent weeks planning the perfect meal, researching recipes, shopping for special ingredients. Linda had arrived early and immediately started helping in the kitchen, taking over completely. By the time dinner was served, she was accepting compliments on her cooking while I sat silently, my carefully planned menu transformed into something unrecognizable. "You're so lucky to have such a wonderful mother-in-law," our guests had said. "She's amazing." And I'd smiled and agreed, even as I felt invisible in my own home. There was the time she'd shared news of Jake's promotion at work before we told our families. The time she'd booked us a surprise weekend getaway without asking if we were free. The time she'd signed us up for couples counseling at her church because she thought we seemed stressed. Every boundary I'd tried to set had been met with tears, manipulation, or Jake's intervention. "She's getting older," he'd say. "She lost her own mother when she was young. She just wants to be involved." But this was different. This wasn't about casseroles or vacation photos. This was about my baby, my body, my most intimate moment of joy, and she'd stolen it as casually as she'd stolen credit for my Christmas dinner. I looked at the photo again, really looked at it. Linda wasn't just standing between Jake and me, she was literally in the center. Both of us turned toward her instead of each other. Even in our wedding photo, she'd managed to make herself the focus. My phone buzzed with another notification. Linda had shared her original post to 3 different Facebook groups: Expecting Grandparents, Denver Moms, and Blessed Families. Each share had generated dozens more comments, spreading my private news to hundreds of strangers. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace, on being the perfect daughter-in-law, that I'd forgotten to protect myself. I'd let Linda's boundary violations become normal, acceptable, even endearing. But looking at her Facebook posts, reading the comments from people I'd never met congratulating me on my pregnancy, I finally understood what I'd been too naive to see before. This wasn't love. This was control, and it was about to get much worse before it got better. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes before I finally found the courage to text Linda directly. My hands were shaking as I typed, "Linda, I need to talk to you about the Facebook post. I'm really upset that you announced my pregnancy before I had a chance to tell my own family." The response came back within minutes. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I was just so excited I couldn't contain myself. You know how much I love you and Jake? I thought everyone already knew. I read it 3 times, feeling my anger build with each pass. No acknowledgement of the harm done, no real apology. Just excuses and deflection wrapped in fake sweetness. I typed back. You knew we hadn't told anyone yet. Jake had just found out 5 minutes before you posted. This was supposed to be our moment to share. I didn't realize it was such a big deal. I'm just so thrilled to be a grandmother. Can't we just focus on the joy of this beautiful blessing? There. It was the classic Linda move. Make herself the victim, minimize my feelings, and redirect to something that made her look good. I'd seen her do it 100 times before, but never to me so directly. It is a big deal, Linda. My own mother found out on Facebook. That's not okay. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I certainly didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. I was just sharing my joy with my friends and family. I didn't think you'd be so sensitive about it. My hands were trembling now. Sensitive was Linda's favorite word for dismissing someone's legitimate concerns. I'd watched her use it on Jake's sister, on his cousins, on anyone who dared to question her behavior. This isn't about being sensitive. This is about respect and boundaries. You had no right to announce my pregnancy without my permission. Oh, sweetie, I think you're overreacting. We're family. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. That's how families work. Besides, everyone is so happy for you. Look at all the love pouring in. I wanted to scream. She was twisting the narrative, making my legitimate anger seem petty and ungrateful. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that I could almost see how I'd fallen for it for years. Linda, I need you to understand that this hurt me deeply. I need you to acknowledge that and commit to asking permission before sharing our personal news in the future. I understand that you're emotional right now. Pregnancy hormones can make us all a bit irrational. But you know I love you like my own daughter. I would never intentionally hurt you. I just got carried away with my excitement about becoming a grandmother. Surely you can understand that. There it was again, the dismissal of my feelings as hormonal irrationality, the fake declaration of love, the subtle guilt trip about her excitement. It was masterful manipulation, and I'd fallen for it every single time before, but something had shifted in me. Maybe it was the pregnancy, maybe it was finally reaching my breaking point, but I could see through her tactics with startling clarity. Whether you intended to hurt me or not, you did hurt me. And I need you to respect my boundaries going forward. Of course, sweetie. I always respect your boundaries. I'm sorry if I got a little carried away. It's just that I've been waiting so long to be a grandmother, and I'm just so happy for you both. I stared at the message, realizing she hadn't actually agreed to anything. She'd apologized for getting carried away, but not for violating my privacy. She'd claimed to respect my boundaries while completely ignoring the one I just set. When Jake got home that evening, I showed him the text thread. He read through it quickly, then looked up at me with that familiar expression, the one that said he wanted this problem to disappear. See, she apologized. She didn't mean any harm. Jake, read it again. She didn't actually apologize for what she did. She apologized for how I felt about it. Those are 2 completely different things. He sighed heavily. Sarah, I know my mother isn't perfect, but she loves you. She loves us. Can't we just let this go? No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. We can't just let this go. This is our baby, our life, our news to share. She stole that from me, and she's not even sorry about it. She said she was sorry. She said she was sorry I felt hurt. That's not the same thing as being sorry for what she did. Jake looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. And maybe I was. Maybe I was finally speaking the language of boundaries and self-respect, a language he'd never learned because his mother had made sure of it. That night, as I lay in bed thinking about Linda's non-apology, I realized something that chilled. me to the bone. This wasn't going to be the end of it. This was just the beginning. Linda had tasted blood, and she was going to want more. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's Facebook post, the cascade of comments, the casual way she'd stolen my moment. At 2 a.m., I found myself scrolling through her social media profiles, looking for something, though I wasn't sure what. Linda was prolific on social media. She posted multiple times daily across Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn. Her feed was a carefully curated collection of inspirational quotes, photos of her morning coffee, and updates about her blessed life. She shared articles about family values, posted throwback photos of Jake as a child, and regularly humble bragged about her volunteer work at the church. But as I scrolled deeper, going back through weeks of posts, I started noticing inconsistencies. Her Instagram stories showed her having lunch alone almost every day, despite her frequent Facebook posts about date nights with her husband Rick. She posted about a romantic weekend getaway 2 weeks ago, but her location text showed she'd been at a hotel downtown 20 minutes from their house. I found myself taking screenshots, documenting the timeline. On March 15th, she'd posted a photo of roses with the caption, "My sweet husband surprised me just because." But her Instagram story from the same day showed her buying the roses herself at King Soopers. On March 22nd, she'd shared a Facebook post about having a wonderful family dinner, but Rick was nowhere to be seen in any of the photos. The more I looked, the more obvious it became. Linda's marriage was in trouble, and she was working overtime to hide it. Her social media presence was a desperate performance, a way to maintain the illusion that her life was perfect. I remembered the last time we'd seen Rick. It had been at Easter dinner, and he'd barely spoken to Linda all evening. I'd attributed it to his naturally quiet personality, but now I recalled how he'd flinched when she'd touched his arm, how he'd stayed on his phone instead of engaging with her constant attempts at conversation. In her recent posts, Linda had been sharing more and more articles about the importance of family, the blessing of children, the joy of grandparenthood. She'd been liking and commenting on pregnancy announcement strangers, joining online groups for expecting grandparents, and even sharing stock photos of babies with captions about future blessings. My pregnancy wasn't just exciting news. To her, it was a lifeline, a way to distract from whatever was falling apart in her own life, a chance to be relevant and important and needed again. I thought about her text messages from earlier, the way she'd deflected and manipulated, the way she'd made herself the victim while completely ignoring my feelings. It was the behavior of someone desperate to maintain control, someone who couldn't afford to admit fault because her entire identity was built on being the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect Christian woman. But if her marriage was failing, if her perfect life was crumbling, then her carefully constructed image was built on lies. And people who build their lives on lies will do anything to protect those lies, even if it means destroying someone else's happiness. I took one final screenshot, Linda's most recent Instagram story, posted just hours after our text conversation. It was a photo of a pregnancy test, clearly from Google Images, with the caption, "Blessed to be part of this journey." Hashtag future grandma, hashtag blessed, hashtag family. She was still capitalizing on my pregnancy for social media attention, still making my news about her dot as I finally drifted off to sleep. A dark thought crossed my mind. Linda had taken something precious from me without permission, something that could never be given back. She'd shown me that boundaries meant nothing to her, that my feelings were irrelevant compared to her need for attention and control. But what if I knew something about her that she desperately wanted to keep private? What if the tables could be turned? I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was better than that. But deep down, I knew the seed had been planted. Linda had started this war, and she'd shown me exactly how it was going to be fought. The opportunity came 3 days later when Linda called asking if I could stop by to pick up some baby clothes she'd found at a consignment shop. I just couldn't resist. She gushed over the phone. I saw these adorable little outfits and I had to get them for my grandbaby. I wanted to refuse. I wasn't ready to see her face to face after the Facebook incident. But Jake encouraged me to go. It's her way of apologizing, he said. She's trying to make things right. Linda's house was a monument to suburban perfection. Manicured lawn, seasonal decorations, interior straight out of a home magazine. She'd always taken pride in her beautiful home, frequently posting photos of her latest decorating projects on social media. Come in, she said, practically bouncing with excitement. I have so many wonderful things to show you. The baby clothes were laid out on her dining room table like a miniature fashion show. Tiny sleepers, impossibly small socks, little onesies with sayings like Grandma's Little Angel and Bless Baby. It was sweet and overwhelming, and exactly the kind of gesture that would have melted my heart a week ago. I hope you don't mind that I got a few things, Linda said, watching my face carefully. I just saw them and imagined my grandbaby wearing them, and I couldn't help myself. They're lovely, Linda. Thank you. I also picked up some books about pregnancy and parenting. I know you're probably reading everything you can get your hands on. First pregnancies can be so overwhelming. She disappeared into her home office to get the books, and I found myself alone in her living room. That's when I saw it, a manila folder on the coffee table, partially hidden under a magazine. The tab read, Dissolution of Marriage, Matthews. Vs. Matthews. My heart stopped. I glanced toward the office, could hear Linda rustling around looking for the books. Without thinking, I lifted the magazine and opened the folder. The first document was a petition for divorce, filed by Rick Matthews against Linda Matthews. The date was from 2 months ago. I scanned the pages quickly, my hands shaking. Irreconcilable differences, equitable distribution of marital assets, temporary spousal support. There were other documents underneath financial statements, property evaluations, a mediation agreement. Linda and Rick were getting divorced, and it had been in progress for months. All those Facebook posts about date nights and romantic gestures, all those pictures of their blessed marriage, it was all fake. Heard Linda's footsteps coming back and quickly closed the folder, putting the magazine back in place. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Here we are, she said brightly, carrying an armload of pregnancy books. I thought you might find these helpful. I remember when I was pregnant with Jake, I read everything I could get my hands on. I took the books, trying to keep my expression neutral. Thank you, Linda. This is very thoughtful. I hope you know how much this baby means to me, she said, her voice suddenly emotional. I've been dreaming of being a grandmother for so long. This is the most exciting thing that's happened to our family in years. The most exciting thing that's happened to our family in years. Not her family, our family. She was including me in her narrative, making me complicit in her deception. And suddenly, I understood why she'd been so desperate to announce my pregnancy. Why she'd been so possessive of my news. My baby wasn't just a grandchild to her. It was a distraction, a way to redirect attention from her failing marriage. A chance to play the role of the devoted grandmother while her identity as a devoted wife crumbled in private. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw past the perfect facade. She looked exhausted. Her makeup was applied a little, too heavily. Her smile was strained, and there were shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. Linda, I said carefully, how are you doing? Really? Her smile faltered for just a moment. I'm wonderful, honey. Just so blessed and happy. Why do you ask? You just seem, I don't know, tired, stressed. Oh, you know how it is. Busy with church activities and volunteer work. But I'm fine. Just fine. She was lying, and we both knew it. But I also knew she'd never admit the truth, never let her perfect mask slip. She'd rather live in denial than acknowledge that her marriage was over, that her carefully constructed image was built on sand. As I drove home with the baby clothes in my passenger seat, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for Linda. She was clearly struggling, clearly desperate, but another part of me felt something darker. She'd violated my privacy, stolen my moment, and now I knew her deepest secret. The question was, what was I going to do with that knowledge? That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept seeing those divorce papers, kept thinking about Linda's desperate smile, kept feeling the weight of her secret pressing down on me like a physical burden. I found myself at my kitchen table, with a cup of tea and my journal, a habit I developed during therapy sessions years ago when I was dealing with anxiety about my career. Writing helped me process difficult emotions, and this situation was more complicated than anything I'd faced before. What kind of person does this make me? I wrote, she hurt me, violated my privacy, stole my moment, but does that give me the right to hurt her back? I thought about Linda's Facebook posts, all those carefully crafted images of marital bliss. She'd been lying to everyone, including her own family. Jake had no idea his parents were getting divorced. Neither did his sister Amy, who lived in California and stayed in touch with the family mainly through social media. But maybe she's planning to tell them soon. I continued writing. Maybe she's just waiting for the right moment. Maybe I'm not supposed to know this, except I did know. And the knowledge was changing everything about how I viewed Linda's behavior. Her desperation to be involved in my pregnancy, her need to control, the narrative, her inability to respect boundaries, it all made sense now. She was losing her identity as a wife, so she was clinging to her identity as a mother and soon-to-be grandmother. I thought about what my therapist used to say about motivations versus actions. Understanding why someone behaves a certain way doesn't excuse the behavior, but it can help you respond more compassionately. Did Linda's failing marriage justify her violation of my privacy? Absolutely not. But it did explain it. She's scared, I wrote. She's losing everything she thought defined her, and she's grasping at anything that makes her feel important and needed. But understanding Linda's motivations didn't erase the hurt she'd caused me. It didn't give me back my moment of joy, didn't undo the pain of finding out about my own pregnancy announcement from strangers on Facebook. It didn't change the fact that she'd shown no genuine remorse, no willingness to respect my boundaries going forward. I started making 2 lists, reasons to keep Linda's secret and reasons to expose it. The first list was longer than I expected. She was family, even if she didn't always act like it. She was clearly struggling with the end of her marriage. Exposing her secret would hurt Jake and Amy, who didn't deserve to be caught in the middle. It would cause family drama that might last for years. It would make me look vindictive and petty. The second list was shorter, but felt more powerful. She'd shown me that boundaries meant nothing to her. She'd stolen my moment and shown no genuine remorse. She'd lied to everyone, including her own children. She'd made my pregnancy about herself and would probably continue to do so throughout my entire pregnancy and beyond. But what would I actually accomplish? I wrote, would embarrassing her publicly make me feel better? Would it change anything? I thought about the kind of person I wanted to be, the kind of mother I wanted to become. Did I want to be someone who fought fire with fire, who responded to cruelty with cruelty? Or did I want to be someone who found a different way to protect herself and her family? Maybe there's a third option, I realized. Maybe I don't have to choose between suffering in silence and public revenge. Maybe I can use this knowledge differently. I closed my journal and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about Linda's desperate smile, her perfectly applied makeup hiding the exhaustion and pain. I thought about Jake's automatic defense of his mother, his inability to see the pattern of manipulation that had shaped his entire life, Most of all, I thought about my unborn baby. What kind of environment did I want to bring this child into? What kind of boundaries did I want to establish now before it was too late? By morning, I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge or public humiliation. It was about protection, about setting boundaries that actually meant something. It was about using the truth not as a weapon, but as a shield. Linda had shown me who she really was. Now it was time to show her who I really was too. Over the next few days, I found myself paying closer attention to Linda's social media activity. Not in a stalker-ish way, but with a careful observation of someone who finally understood what she was looking at. Screenshot her posts about date nights that clearly never happened. I documented her shares of articles about marriage and family values while she was actively going through divorce proceedings. I noted the timing of her inspirational quotes about weathering storms together and the blessing of a good marriage. Oh, posted after I'd seen those divorce papers. The most revealing posts were the ones about grandparenthood. She joined at least 5 different Facebook groups for expecting grandparents since my pregnancy announcement. She'd shared articles about the special bond between grandmothers and grandchildren and posted polls asking about nursery themes and baby names. She was building an entire identity around being my baby's grandmother. While keeping her divorce secret from her own family, I also started documenting her boundary violations, not just the big ones, but the small ones that I'd been trained to ignore. The way she'd text me directly instead of going through Jake when she wanted to make plans. The way she'd give me unsolicited advice about my appearance, my career, my marriage. The way she'd post photos of Jake and me without asking, tagging us in content that made us look like props in her perfect family narrative. Created a private Instagram account and began saving her stories, the ones that disappeared after 24 hours and told a different story than her permanent posts. Stories of her eating lunch alone, shopping alone, going to church alone. Stories that revealed the gaps in her blessed marriage narrative, but the most damning evidence was her recent behavior toward Rick. In her public posts, she tagged him in romantic quotes and anniversary throwbacks. But in her stories, he was nowhere to be seen. She'd post about family dinner, but show photos of just her and Jake. She'd share articles about standing by your man, while publicly ignoring his absence from her life. I started keeping a timeline, cross-referencing her social media activity with what I knew about the divorce proceedings. The petition had been filed in February, but she'd been posting about her wonderful marriage all through March and April. She'd shared an article about fighting for your marriage the same week. I'd seen those mediation documents. Jake noticed my increased attention to social media. "You're on your phone a lot lately," he said one evening. "Everything okay?" "Just documenting some things," I said carefully. "Your mom's been very active online lately. She's excited about the baby. She's always been like that. When she gets excited about something, she goes overboard." I wanted to tell him about the divorce papers, about the facade his mother was maintaining, about the way she was using my pregnancy as a distraction from her crumbling marriage, but I wasn't ready yet. I needed to be strategic about when and how I revealed what I knew. "Has she seemed different to you lately?" I asked, more, I don't know, desperate for attention. Jake shrugged. "She's always liked being the center of attention. It's just her personality. What about your dad? Have you talked to him recently?" "Not really. You know how he is, not much of a phone person." "Why?" I could have told him then. I could have said that his parents were getting divorced and his mother was lying to everyone about it, but something held me back. Maybe it was the knowledge that once I opened that door, there would be no closing. Maybe it was the realization that Jake's entire worldview would be shattered. And I wasn't sure he was ready for that. Or maybe it was the growing understanding that this information was power, and I needed to be very careful about how I used it. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to use Linda's secret to hurt her, at least not yet. but I was going to use it to protect myself and my family. I was going to set boundaries that actually meant something, and I was going to have leverage to enforce them. Linda had shown me that she would violate any boundary, ignore any request, dismiss any concern. She'd made it clear that my feelings and privacy meant nothing to her. But she'd also shown me her greatest vulnerability, the desperate need to maintain her perfect image. If she wanted to play games, I'd play along. But this time, I'd be playing to win. The baby shower incident happened when I was 12 weeks pregnant. I'd been planning to wait until after the first trimester to start thinking about celebrations, but Linda had other ideas. "I've been thinking about your baby shower," she announced during our weekly dinner at her house. "I have so many wonderful ideas. I'm thinking we could do a garden theme, maybe at the church hall. I know the perfect caterer, and my friend Martha has the most beautiful decorations." "Linda," I interrupted gently, "I appreciate the thought, but I haven't even decided if I want a baby shower yet." She looked at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Of course you want a baby shower. Every mother needs a baby shower. It's tradition. Maybe we could discuss it later when I'm further along." "Oh, sweetie, if we wait too long, all the good venues will be booked. And I need time to plan properly. I'm thinking maybe 50 guests. I already have a list started. 50 guests." I felt my blood pressure rising. "Linda, I don't even know if I want a shower at all, let alone one with 50 people. Don't be silly. Of course you want a shower." I've been dreaming about planning my daughter-in-law's baby shower for years. There it was again, my life event being framed as her dream. My pregnancy being treated as her experience to orchestrate. "I understand you're excited," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "But this is my decision to make. If I decide I want a shower, I'll let you know." "Well, I'm sure you'll come around. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and put a hold on the church hall for the third Saturday in June, just to be safe." I stared at her, speechless. She just completely ignored everything I'd said and made a unilateral decision about my baby shower. "Linda, please don't book anything without talking to me first." "Oh, it's just a hold, sweetie. Nothing official. But if we wait too long, someone else will snatch up the date." Jake jumped in, as he always did when tensions rose. "Mom, why don't you and Sarah talk about this later? Maybe put together some ideas and see what Sarah thinks." "Of course. I'll put together a whole presentation. I have so many wonderful ideas." I wanted to scream. Instead, I excused myself to use the bathroom and took several deep breaths, trying to calm down. When I came back, Linda was showing Jake photos on her phone. "What do you think of these decorations? Aren't they adorable? And look at this cake design. Mom, I thought you were going to wait and discuss this with Sarah." "I'm just showing you some ideas. I want everything to be perfect for our baby. Our baby, not my baby, not even Jake's baby. Our baby," as if Linda had some ownership stake in the child I was carrying. Over the next few days, the situation escalated. Linda called me twice to discuss shower details that I'd explicitly said I didn't want to discuss. She sent me links to party supply websites and forwarded me photos of baby shower decorations from Pinterest. She mentioned the shower plans to my mother-in-law's sister, who then called me to offer to help with preparations. The final straw came when I received a Facebook message from someone I barely knew, a woman from Linda's church who'd apparently been recruited to help with decorations. "Linda told me about your shower plans," the message read. "I have some beautiful baby-themed centerpieces I'd love to contribute." I screenshotted the message and sent it to Jake with a simple text. "Your mother is telling people about shower plans that don't exist." He called me immediately. "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No, Jake, there's been no misunderstanding. Your mother is planning a party I explicitly said I don't want, at a venue I never approved, with people I've never met. She's involving strangers in our private family business, just like she did with the pregnancy announcement. I'm sure she's just trying to help. Stop. My voice was sharper than I'd intended. Stop making excuses for her. Stop minimizing my feelings. Stop acting like this is normal behavior. There was a long pause. What do you want me to do? I want you to call your mother and tell her to cancel any shower plans she's made without my permission. I want you to tell her that if I decide I want a shower, I'll plan it myself. And I want you to start recognizing that this is part of a pattern of behavior that's been going on for years. Sarah, no, Jake, I'm done. I'm done being the understanding daughter-in-law. I'm done pretending that boundary violations are just enthusiasm. I'm done protecting her feelings at the expense of my own. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a guest list for the baby shower I didn't want. Not because I was planning to have one, but because I was documenting how Linda had assumed control over yet another aspect of my life without my consent. 50-3 names. She'd compiled a list of 53 people to invite to celebrate my pregnancy, and I knew maybe half of them. The rest were her friends, her church acquaintances, her book club members. She turned my hypothetical baby shower into a social event for her own benefit. I looked at the list and felt something inside me snap. This wasn't about enthusiasm or excitement. This was about control, possession, and a complete disregard for my autonomy as a person, and the mother. Linda had crossed every boundary I'd tried to set. She'd stolen my pregnancy announcement, dismissed my feelings, and now she was planning my baby shower without my consent. Each violation had been met with Jake's automatic defense and my own reluctant acceptance, but I was done accepting the unacceptable. I was done being polite while she trampled over my autonomy. I was done protecting her image while she destroyed my peace of mind. It was time to show Linda that actions have consequences. And I had exactly the right consequence in mind. I spent the next morning crafting my response. Not in anger, not in haste, but with the careful consideration of someone who understood exactly what they were doing and why. I opened a new Facebook post and stared at the blank text box for a long time. The power of this moment wasn't lost on me. I was about to do to Linda exactly what she'd done to me. The difference was that my announcement would be true, and it would serve a purpose beyond just seeking attention. My first draft was too angry. Since my mother-in-law, Linda, feels comfortable announcing my private news without permission, I thought I'd return the favor by announcing that she and Rick are getting divorced. Apparently, what's mine is hers, and what's hers is mine. Isn't that how family works? Too bitter. Too obviously vengeful. I deleted it and tried again. My second draft was too detailed. I've learned some interesting news about family announcements. It turns out Linda and Rick are getting divorced, something Linda has been keeping secret while posting about her blessed marriage and planning my baby shower without my permission. I guess privacy only matters when it's your own. Still too harsh. I wasn't trying to destroy Linda. I was trying to protect myself and establish boundaries. I needed something that would make my point without making me look like the villain. My third draft felt closer. Family announcement. I've just learned that Linda and Rick are going through a divorce. I wanted to share this news since Linda has taught me that family members don't need permission before announcing each other's life events on social media. Wishing them both the best during this difficult time. Better. It was factual. It made the connection to her behavior clear, but it maintained a veneer of civility. I could deliver the consequence without looking petty or vindictive, but as I stared at the draft, I realized something was still missing. This wasn't just about getting revenge, it was about establishing boundaries for the future. It was about showing Linda that her actions had consequences and that I was no longer going to be a passive victim of her boundary violations. Tried one more time. I have some family news to share. Linda and Rick are going through a divorce. Since Linda recently taught me that exciting family news should be shared immediately on social media without waiting for the family members involved to make their own announcements, I wanted to make sure everyone heard this important update right away. I'm sure Linda will appreciate everyone's thoughts and prayers during this difficult time, just as she appreciated everyone's congratulations. When she announced my pregnancy before I had the chance to tell my own family, sending love and support to everyone navigating major life changes. I read it 3 times, checking for any language that was unnecessarily cruel or vindictive. The tone was measured, even sympathetic. I was simply applying Linda's own logic to her own situation. If family members didn't need permission to announce each other's news, then this post was completely justified by her own standards. The beauty of it was that Linda couldn't object without admitting that what she'd done to me was wrong. She couldn't claim I'd violated her privacy without acknowledging that she'd violated mine. She couldn't play the victim without revealing herself to be a hypocrite. I saved the draft and closed my laptop. I wanted to sit with it for a few hours, make sure I was doing this for the right reasons. This wasn't about hurting Linda, it was about protecting myself and my unborn child from future boundary violations. It was about establishing consequences for behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. I thought about my baby, about the kind of environment I wanted to create for this child. Did I want to raise my baby in a family where boundaries were meaningless? Where manipulation was accepted as normal? Where one person's need for attention and control could override everyone else's right to privacy and autonomy? No, I wanted better than that. I wanted my child to grow up understanding that their privacy mattered, that their boundaries deserved respect, that they had the right to control their own narrative. Linda had shown me that she would never respect boundaries voluntarily. She'd proven that gentle requests, direct conversations, and even clear demands meant nothing to her. The only language she understood was consequences. It was time to speak her language. Posted it at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, the same time of day Linda had posted about my pregnancy. The symmetry felt important, like I was completing a circle she'd started. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 5 minutes. I had 12 comments and 23 likes. Within 10 minutes, my phone was ringing. Jake calling from work. Sarah, what the hell did you just post on? Facebook? I shared some family news, I said calmly, just like your mother taught me to do. This is insane. You can't just announce my parents' divorce on social media. Why not? Your mother announced my pregnancy on social media. Apparently, family members don't need permission to share each other's news. That's completely different. How? How is it different, Jake? There was a long pause. Sarah, please take the post down. My mom is going to be devastated. I'm sure she will be. Just like I was devastated when she announced my pregnancy. The difference is that what I posted is true and it affects her life, not mine. But this will hurt her. And what she did didn't hurt me. Another pause. I could hear Jake breathing heavily, struggling to find an argument that didn't make his mother look like a hypocrite. Sarah, please, I'm begging you, take it down. No, the word came out stronger than I'd expected. 3 letters that felt like drawing a line in the sand. I won't take it down, Jake. Your mother needs to understand that actions have consequences. She violated my privacy, dismissed my feelings, and showed no genuine remorse. Now she gets to experience what that feels like. I hung up and watched my phone explode with notifications. Comments were pouring in from family members, friends, acquaintances, everyone expressing shock and confusion about Linda and Rick's divorce. I had no idea they were having problems. They seemed so happy in all their photos. This is such a shock. They've always been relationship goals. Linda never mentioned anything about this at book club, but the most telling comments came from people who apparently weren't as surprised as they claimed to be. I wondered why Rick wasn't in any of the recent family photos. Now that you mention it, I haven't seen them together in months. I thought something seemed off at Easter dinner. Linda's carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time, and people were starting to admit they'd noticed the cracks all along. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. Sarah, honey, I just saw your post. Are you okay? I'm fine. Mom, actually, I'm better than fine. This seems unlike you. Are you sure this was the right way to handle things? I thought about that question. Was this the right way to handle things? Was public humiliation ever justified, even when someone had humiliated you first? Mom, Linda announced my pregnancy on Facebook before I could tell my own family. She stole one of the most important moments of my life, and when I tried to talk to her about it, she dismissed my feelings and refused to take responsibility. Now she's planning my baby shower without my permission and involving strangers in our private business. I tried handling things quietly and respectfully, and it didn't work. But sweetheart, fighting fire with fire, this isn't about fighting fire with fire. This is about establishing boundaries. Linda has shown me that she only respects consequences, not requests. So now she has consequences. My mother was quiet for a moment. I can't say I disagree with your reasoning, but I'm worried about what this will do to your marriage. That was the question I'd been avoiding, the one that scared me most. What would this do to Jake and me? Could our marriage survive me publicly humiliating his mother, even if she deserved it? But as I thought about it, I realized the marriage I'd been trying to protect, the one where I stayed quiet and kept the peace while Linda trampled over my boundaries, wasn't a marriage worth saving. If Jake couldn't understand why I reached this point, if he couldn't see the pattern of his mother's behavior, then we had bigger problems than a Facebook post on my phone, buzzed with a text from Linda. Call me now. I screenshot the text and added it to my growing collection of evidence. Even in her moment of humiliation, Linda was trying to control the situation, making demands instead of acknowledging the hurt she'd caused. I didn't call her. Instead, I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet of my living room, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, peace. For the first time since I'd married Jake, I wasn't walking on eggshells around his mother. I wasn't swallowing my feelings to keep the peace. I wasn't pretending that her behavior was acceptable. I was done being the victim in Linda's drama. Now she could be the victim in mine. When I finally turned my phone back on 3 hours later, I had 47 missed calls, 83 text messages, and 215 Facebook notifications. The post had been shared 32 times and had generated over 300. Comments. The messages ranged from supportive to horrified, with most falling somewhere in between confusion and concern. But the pattern was clear. People were talking about Linda's divorce, just like they'd talked about my pregnancy. The difference was that this time, Linda was experiencing what it felt like to have her private life become public entertainment. Jake's sister Amy had called 6 times from California. His cousins were demanding explanations. Linda's church friends were expressing shock and offering prayers. The family group chat that I'd been added to but rarely participated in was exploding with messages, but it was the private messages that interested me most. 3 different people had reached out to share their own stories about Linda's boundary violations, incidents I'd never heard about, times when she'd overstepped and made family members uncomfortable. I wasn't the only one who'd been struggling with her behavior. I was just the first one to do something about it. Jake came home early from work, his face grim and his movements sharp with barely controlled anger. Sarah, we need to talk. I know. My mother is devastated. She's been crying for 3 hours straight. My dad had to come over to help her deal with all the phone calls. I'm sorry she's upset. I know how that feels. This isn't the same thing, Jake. Stop. Just stop. I turned to face him fully, ready for the conversation I'd been avoiding for years. It is exactly the same thing. Your mother violated my privacy. shared my personal news without permission, and refused to acknowledge that she'd done anything wrong. Now she knows how that feels. But you could have handled this privately. You didn't have to humiliate her in front of the entire family. I tried handling it privately. I asked her not to share our news. I explained how much it hurt me. I asked her to respect my boundaries going forward. She ignored every single request and started planning my baby shower without my permission. What exactly was I supposed to do? Jake ran his hands through his hair, pacing around our living room. I don't know, but not this. This is nuclear, Sarah. This is going to destroy relationships. What relationships, Jake? The relationship where your mother treats me like a possession? The relationship where I'm expected to smile and say thank you while she tramples over every boundary I try to set? Those relationships were already destroyed. I just stopped pretending they were healthy. She loves you. No, she doesn't. The words came out quietly, but with absolute certainty. She loves controlling me. She loves being able to take credit for my moments and insert herself into my life. But she doesn't love me, because if she loved me, she would respect my feelings and my boundaries. Jake stared at me like I was a stranger. I don't even recognize you right now. Good. Because the person you're used to, the one who stayed quiet and kept the peace no matter what, that person was miserable. That person was slowly disappearing, trying to maintain harmony in a family that doesn't understand the concept of respect. My phone rang Linda's ringtone. I declined the call. She wants to talk to you, Jake said. I'm sure she does. But I have nothing to say to her until she's ready to have an honest conversation about her behavior. And based on her text messages, she's not there yet. Jake's phone buzzed. He looked at it and sighed. She's asking if you'll take the post down if she apologizes. What kind of apology? I don't know. An apology. Jake, your mother has already apologized, sort of. She apologized for how I felt about her actions, not for the actions themselves. She blamed my reaction on pregnancy hormones and refused to acknowledge that she'd done anything wrong. That's not an apology, that's manipulation. So what do you want from her? I thought about that question. What did I want from Linda? An acknowledgement that she'd violated my privacy? A commitment to respect my boundaries going forward? A genuine understanding of how her actions had affected me? I want her to admit that she was wrong to announce my pregnancy without permission. I want her to acknowledge that she hurt me and that my feelings are valid. I want her to commit to asking permission before sharing any news about me or my baby in the future. And I want her to stop planning events for me without my consent. That seems reasonable. It is reasonable. It's what I asked for weeks ago, and she refused. Maybe, now that she understands what it feels like to have your privacy violated, she'd be more willing to listen. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Sarah, I need you to understand something. My mother isn't perfect, but she's family. And in our family, we protect each other. We don't air our dirty laundry in public. Whose dirty laundry am I airing, Jake? Mine or hers? You know what I mean? Actually, I don't. Because the only dirty laundry being aired here is Linda's dishonesty about her marriage and her pattern of boundary violations. I'm not sharing anything about my own private life. I'm sharing information about someone who's been sharing information about mine. Jake sat down heavily on her couch, looking defeated. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it. You just have to choose whether you're going to keep enabling your mother's behavior or start supporting your wife. Because that's what this comes down to, Jake, not Facebook posts or hurt feelings or family drama. It comes down to whether you're going to be my partner or your mother's defender. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken tension and avoided conflicts. This was the conversation we should have had before we got married, before we started trying to have children, before I'd spent 3 years slowly losing myself in an effort to keep his family happy. Finally, Jake looked up at me. What if she agrees to your terms? Will you take down the post? If she gives me a genuine apology and commits to respecting my boundaries going forward, I'll consider it. But Jake, this isn't just about one Facebook post. This is about establishing a new dynamic where I don't have to choose between my own well-being and family harmony. I understand, he said quietly. I think I'm finally starting to understand. The next morning, Jake was quiet over coffee. I could see him processing everything that had happened, finally looking at his mother's behavior through a different lens. It was like watching someone wake up from a long dream, uncomfortable but necessary. I called my dad last night, he said finally, after he went to bed. I waited, not wanting to push him, but curious about what he'd learned. He told me about the divorce, said they've been in mediation for 3 months. He seemed relieved that it was finally out in the open. How do you feel about that? Jake stared into his coffee cup, confused mostly. I mean, I knew they weren't happy, but I thought that was just how long marriages looked. My dad always seemed tired when he was around my mom, but I figured that was normal. When did you start thinking that was normal? I don't know. Always. My mom has always been ... intense. She's always needed to be involved in everything, always. Needed to have opinions about everyone's choices. I thought that was just how mothers were. I thought about my own mother, who had certainly had opinions about my life, but had never tried to control or manipulate me the way Linda did. That's not how all mothers are, Jake. I'm starting to realize that. He looked up at me. Sarah, I owe you an apology. A real one. Okay. I've been defending my mother's behavior for so long, but I stopped seeing it clearly. I made you feel like your feelings didn't matter, like wanting basic respect and boundaries was unreasonable. I put you in a position where you felt like you had to choose between being honest about how you felt and keeping peace in our family. This was more self-awareness than Jake had shown in 3 years of marriage. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness relief that he was finally seeing the truth, and sadness that it had taken such a dramatic event to get there. Thank you for saying that. I found something yesterday, he continued. After I talked to my dad, I went through some old photos on my phone. Do you know that in every single family picture from the last 3 years, my mother is in the center? Even pictures that were supposed to be of you and me, she's somehow in the middle. I thought about our wedding photo, about the Christmas pictures, about the vacation photos from last summer. He was right. Linda had positioned herself as the focal point of every image, even when the occasion wasn't about her. I think she's been doing this my whole life, Jake said, making everything about her, but in a way that seemed loving and supportive. I never questioned it because she always framed it as caring too much, being too involved because she loved us so much. That's called emotional manipulation. I know that now. But when you grow up with it, it feels normal. It feels like love. Jake pulled out his phone and showed me something, a screenshot of a text conversation with his sister Amy from the night before. Amy. I can't believe Sarah posted about Mom and Dad's divorce on Facebook. That's so cruel. Jake, actually, I think I understand why she did it. Mom announced Sarah's pregnancy on Facebook without asking. Amy, wait, what? When? Jake, a few weeks ago. Sarah hadn't even told our parents yet, and Mom posted about it because she was excited. Sarah was devastated. Amy, oh my God, I didn't know that. But still, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Jake, maybe not, but 1 wrong that goes unaddressed leads to more wrongs. Sarah tried to talk to Mom about boundaries, and Mom basically ignored her. Amy, since when do you take Sarah's side over Mom's? Jake, since I realized that taking sides was the problem. I should be supporting my wife, not defending my mother's bad behavior. I looked up at Jake. You really sent that? I did. And Amy didn't respond for 2 hours. I think she's processing it too. How do you feel about that? Scared, honestly. Like I'm dismantling something that's been holding our family together for years, but also relieved. Like maybe what was holding used together wasn't actually healthy. Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Linda. I need to talk to both of you. Can you come over tonight? He showed me the message. What do you think? I think it depends on whether she's ready to have an honest conversation or if she just wants to guilt us into backing down. How do we know the difference? I thought about all the conversations I'd had with Linda over the years, all the ways she'd deflected and manipulated when confronted with uncomfortable truths. If she starts by acknowledging what she did wrong and how it affected me, then she's ready for an honest conversation. If she starts by talking about how hurt she is or how she didn't mean any harm, then she's still in manipulation mode. Jake nodded. Should I tell her we'll come? Tell her we'll come if she's prepared to have an honest conversation about boundaries and respect. If she just wants to guilt us or make excuses, then we can talk when she's ready to be honest. He typed the message and hit send. The response came back immediately. Of course. I just want to understand what I did wrong so I can fix it. I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't a perfect response, but it was better than anything Linda had offered before. Maybe experiencing consequences for her actions had actually opened her eyes to the impact of her behavior. Okay, I said, we'll go. But Jake, I need you to support me in this conversation. If she tries to make me the villain or dismiss my feelings, I need you to speak up. I will, he said. I promise. For the first time in weeks, I felt like Jake and I were truly on the same team. It had taken a crisis to get there, but maybe that's what some relationships needed, a moment when everything was laid bare and the choice became clear. Linda's house felt different when we walked in that evening. The perfectly maintained facade was still there, the spotless counters, the fresh flowers, the coordinated throw pillows, but there was an energy of exhaustion underneath it all. Linda herself looked smaller somehow, her usual brightness dimmed. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy despite her careful makeup, and her hands shook slightly as she gestured for us to sit in the living room. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I know you didn't have to. Jake and I sat on the couch while Linda took the chair across from us. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't trying to control the seating arrangement or direct the conversation. Sarah, she began, then stopped and took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. A real one. I waited, not wanting to interrupt what felt like a genuine moment. When I posted about your pregnancy on Facebook, I told myself I was just excited. I convinced myself that sharing happy news was what families do, but that wasn't true. Her voice cracked slightly. The truth is that I was desperate for something good to focus on, something that would make me feel important and needed. This was not what I'd expected. No deflection, no excuses, no attempts to minimize what she'd done. My marriage has been falling apart for months, she continued. Rick and I have barely spoken since February, except through liars. I've been pretending everything was fine, posting about our wonderful life while feeling completely empty inside. She pulled a tissue from the box on the side table, dabbing at her eyes carefully to preserve her makeup. When you told Jake about the pregnancy and he called me so excited, it felt like a lifeline. Finally, something wonderful was happening, something I could be part of. So I posted about it immediately, not because I thought it was my news to share, but because I needed something, anything, to make me feel like my life wasn't completely falling apart. I felt my anger soften slightly. This was the most honest Linda had ever been with me. But that doesn't excuse what I did, she said, quickly, as if she'd seen my expression change. Your pregnancy isn't about me. Your joy isn't mine to steal. I violated your privacy and stole one of the most important moments of your life because I was too selfish and desperate to think about how it would affect you. Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. This was the acknowledgement I'd been waiting for. I hurt you, Linda continued. And when you tried to tell me how much I'd hurt you, I dismissed your feelings because I couldn't bear to admit what I'd done. I made it about pregnancy hormones and oversensitivity because facing the truth about my behavior was too painful. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at her perfectly manicured garden. I've been thinking about yesterday, about how it felt to see my private business spread all over Facebook. How humiliating it was to have people calling and commenting about something I hadn't chosen to share. How angry I was that someone else had control over my narrative. She turned back to face us. That's exactly what I did to you, isn't it? I took control of your narrative and made it about me. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what you did. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. Not sorry that you're upset. Not sorry that there was a misunderstanding, but sorry that I violated your privacy and stole your moment and then refused to take responsibility for it. I felt tears prick my eyes. This was the apology I'd needed, the acknowledgement I'd been waiting for, and the baby shower planning, she continued. I was doing it again, wasn't I? Taking over your experience and making it about what I wanted instead of what you wanted. Yes, I've been so desperate to feel important, to feel needed, that I forgot that love isn't about controlling people. It's about respecting them. Linda sat back down, her hands folded in her lap. I know I can't undo what I've done. I know that posting about the divorce was humiliating and painful for me, but I also know that I needed to understand how my actions affected you. She looked at Jake. And honey, I'm sorry for putting you in the middle of this. I trained you to defend me instead of teaching you to think critically about whether my behavior was appropriate. That wasn't fair to you or to Sarah. Jake nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that. So what happens now? Linda asked. I know I need to earn back your trust. I know that saying sorry isn't enough. What do you need from me going forward? I thought about her question. What did I need from Linda? I need you to ask permission before sharing any news about me or my baby, I said. I need you to respect my decisions about my own life, even if you don't agree with them. And I need you to stop planning events for me without my consent. Done, she said immediately. And if I tell you that something you've done has hurt me, I need you to listen and acknowledge it instead of making excuses. Yes, absolutely. And I need you to respect Jake's role as my husband. If there's a conflict between what you want and what I want, he needs to be free to support me without guilt or manipulation. Linda looked at Jake, then back at me. That's going to be hard for me. I'm used to being the most important woman in his life. But you're right, you should be now. It wasn't perfect. There would still be adjustments, still be moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But for the first time since I'd known Linda, I felt like I was talking to a real person instead of performance. I'll take down the Facebook post, I said. But Linda, if you violate my boundaries again, there will be consequences. I won't go back to suffering in silence. I understand, she said, and I respect that. As we got ready to leave, Linda handed me a handwritten letter. I wrote down everything I promised you tonight, she said. So you have it in writing, and so I can't pretend later that I didn't understand what you needed. I took the letter, feeling something I hadn't felt toward Linda in years, hope. Over the next few weeks, Linda's behavior changed dramatically. It wasn't perfect old habits don't disappear overnight, but the effort was genuine and consistent. When she wanted to share a photo of the baby clothes she'd bought, she texted me first. Would it be okay if I posted a picture of the adorable outfit I found for the baby? I won't tag you if you'd prefer not to be mentioned. When she heard about a parenting class she thought might interest us, she said, I saw information about a class that covers newborn care basics. Would you like me to send you the details, or would you prefer to research classes on your own? When her church friends asked about my pregnancy, she told them Sarah and Jake are doing well and are very excited. If you want more details, you should ask Sarah directly. The most telling change was in her social media behavior. Her posts about my pregnancy stopped completely. No more shares to grandparenting groups, no more countdown posts, no more speculation about due dates or gender. If someone asked about the baby in her comments, she would respond simply, "You'll have to ask Sarah and Jake about that." Jake and I developed our own system for managing Linda's involvement. Before any family gathering or conversation about the baby, we would check in with each other about boundaries. What information were we comfortable sharing? What decisions did we want to make privately before involving family? The written agreement Linda had given me became our roadmap. She'd committed to asking permission before sharing any news about my pregnancy or baby, respecting my decisions about medical care, parenting choices, and privacy, not planning events for me without explicit consent, acknowledging when her behavior had caused harm instead of making excuses, supporting Jake's primary loyalty to our marriage. Also included something I hadn't asked for but deeply appreciated. I commit to working on my own emotional health so that my needs don't become your burden. Linda started seeing a therapist to help her process her divorce and examine her patterns of behavior. She joined a support group for women going through major life transitions. She began volunteering at a literacy program instead of focusing all her energy on family relationships. The change in Jake was equally dramatic. He stopped automatically defending his mother's behavior and started checking in with me about how I felt in family situations. When Linda would start to overstep old habits, dying hard, Jake would gently redirect her. "Mom, I think Sarah and I need to talk about that privately first." "Mom, that's really Sarah's decision to make." "Mom, remember what we discussed about asking before planning things for us?" It wasn't confrontational or harsh, but it was consistent. Jake was finally acting like my partner instead of Linda's son. The family dynamic shifted in ways I hadn't expected. Amy called to apologize for her initial reaction to my Facebook post, admitting that she'd also felt overwhelmed by their mother's intensity but had never known how to address it. Rick sent Jake a text thanking him for being brave enough to speak up about things that needed to be said. Even Linda's church friends seemed relieved. Several of them reached out to me directly to say they were glad Linda was getting help and that they'd been concerned about her behavior for months, but the most important change was in my relationship with my pregnancy. For the first time since that positive test, I felt like this baby was truly mine. I could make decisions about appointments, announcements, and preparations without worrying about Linda's interference. I could share news when I wanted to, with whom I wanted to, in the way I wanted to. When we found out we were having a daughter, Jake and I decided to wait a week before telling anyone. We wanted to sit with the news ourselves, to talk about names and dreams and fears without outside input. When we finally shared the news, Linda's response was perfect. "Congratulations. I'm so happy for you both. Thank you for sharing this with me." Linda's divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in October when I was 6 months pregnant. She called that evening to let us know, her voice steady but tired. "It's done," she said simply. 28 years of marriage officially over. I found myself feeling genuinely sorry for her. Whatever Linda's faults, whatever boundary violations she'd committed, losing a marriage was painful. I could hear the grief in her voice, the exhaustion of months of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. "How are you doing?" I asked and meant it. "I'm sad," she said honestly, but also relieved. "Rick and I haven't been happy for a long time. We just kept pretending because that's what we thought we were supposed to do." She paused and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. "Sarah, I need you to know something. When I announced your pregnancy on Facebook, it wasn't just because I was excited. It was because I was desperate for something good to focus on. My marriage was falling apart, and I felt like such a failure. Your baby represented hope, a new beginning, something beautiful in the middle of all the ugliness. I understood now why she'd been so possessive of my pregnancy, so desperate to be involved. She'd been drowning, and my baby had felt like a life preserver. I'm not making excuses, she continued quickly. What I did was wrong, regardless of my motivations. But I wanted you to understand that it was never about not caring about your feelings. It was about being so overwhelmed by my own pain that I couldn't see past it. I appreciate you telling me that, I said. And Linda, I'm sorry about your marriage. I know this hasn't been easy. Thank you. That means more than you know. Over the following weeks, I watched Linda navigate her new reality with a grace I hadn't expected. She sold the house she and Rick had shared and moved into a small apartment closer to downtown. She started taking art classes, something she'd always wanted to do but had never made time for. She seemed lighter somehow, more authentic. The most surprising development was her relationship with Rick. Once the legal proceedings were over, they managed to maintain a friendship. Not the bitter, acrimonious relationship I'd expected, but a genuine care for each other's well-being. We were terrible spouses, Linda told me one afternoon when she stopped by to drop off a baby gift she'd asked permission to buy, but we're much better friends. We just took too long to figure that out. I found myself developing a new understanding of Linda's behavior over the years. Her need to control, her desperate involvement in everyone's lives, her carefully curated social media presence, it had all been an attempt to distract from the emptiness in her own life. She'd been performing happiness for so long that she'd forgotten what genuine contentment felt like. My pregnancy had offered her a chance to experience real joy vicariously, and she'd grabbed onto it so tightly that she'd nearly crushed it, that understanding her motivations didn't erase the harm she'd caused. It just helped me see her as a whole person, flawed, struggling, but capable of growth. The baby gift she brought was different from the others. Instead of clothes or blankets, it was a photo album with a note for you to fill with your daughters. First, when you're ready to share them and with whom you choose to share them. It was a small gesture, but it showed me that Linda truly understood what she'd taken from me and was committed to ensuring it never happened again. Thank you, I said, running my hands over the beautiful leather cover. This is perfect. I've been thinking about firsts lately, Linda said. How precious they are, how they can never be repeated. I stole your first from you, and I can never give that back. But I can make sure I never steal another one. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two women who'd been through a war together and somehow found peace on the other side. Linda, I said finally, I want you to know that I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because you've shown me that you understand why it was wrong and you're committed to doing better. She started crying then, not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but genuine emotion. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. Maybe not, I replied honestly, but I'm giving it anyway. For my own peace of mind and for my daughter's sake. I want her to grow up in a family where people can make mistakes, take responsibility, and find their way back to each other. Linda nodded, wiping her eyes. I want to be the kind of grandmother she deserves. The kind who adds joy to her life instead of stress to her mother's. You're already becoming that person, I told her, and that's what matters. As my due date approached, I reflected on how much had changed since that day I'd stared at a positive pregnancy test in my bathroom. The woman who had felt powerless and violated seemed like a stranger now. I'd found my voice, established my boundaries, and created the kind of environment I wanted for my daughter. Linda's transformation continued to surprise me. She didn't ask when I was planning to go on maternity leave or whether I was considering a birth plan. She didn't offer unsolicited advice about breastfeeding or sleeping schedules. Instead, she Simply asked, "How can I best support you during this time?" When I told her I wanted to keep the birth private, just Jake and me at the hospital until we were ready for visitors, she responded without hesitation, "Of course. Just let us know when you're ready for us to meet our granddaughter." Our granddaughter. Not her granddaughter, not my baby, but our granddaughter. The distinction mattered. Jake had become a different husband, too. He no longer automatically jumped to his mother's defense when conflicts arose. He checked in with me regularly about how I was feeling, not just physically, but emotionally. He'd started setting his own boundaries with Linda, creating space for our marriage to be the primary relationship in his life. I never realized how much I was asking you to sacrifice for the sake of family peace, he told me one evening as we assembled the crib. I was so focused on keeping everyone happy that I forgot my job was to keep you happy. Your job isn't to keep me happy, I corrected gently. Your job is to be my partner, to support me when I need support and challenge me when I need challenging, to put our marriage first and trust that everything else will follow. He paused in his work, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Do you think we would have figured this out if the Facebook thing hadn't happened? I considered the question honestly. I don't know, maybe eventually, but probably not before a lot more damage was done. Sometimes it takes a crisis to show us what we're really dealing with. Do you regret how you handled it? The public post about the divorce? I thought about that question often. Had there been a better way to handle Linda's behavior? Could I have established boundaries without humiliating her publicly? I regret that it had to happen that way, I said finally. But I don't regret that it happened. Your mother needed to understand that actions have consequences, and I needed to stop accepting unacceptable behavior. If gentle conversations and private requests had worked, we never would have gotten to that point. My dad said something interesting the other day, Jake said. He said watching you stand up to my mother made him realize he could stand up to her too. He said he'd been thinking about divorce for years, but was too afraid of her reaction to actually do it. That surprised me. I'd never thought about how my actions might have affected Rick's decisions. He thanked you, said seeing someone. Finally set boundaries with my mother gave him permission to set his own. I felt a complex mix of emotions about that. Pride that I'd somehow helped Rick find his voice, but also sadness that it had taken so long and required such drastic measures. I hope they're both happier now, I said. They are. And honestly, so am I. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying, trying to manage my mother's emotions and protect everyone from conflict. Now that she's responsible for her own feelings and actions, I can just be her son instead of her caretaker. The nursery was finally complete, a peaceful space in soft yellows and greens, decorated with books and artwork that Jake and I had chosen together. No input from Linda, no suggestions or criticism, just our own vision for our daughter's first room. Standing in that nursery, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced since the early days of my pregnancy. This baby would be born into a family with healthy boundaries, honest communication, and respect for each other's autonomy. She would grow up knowing that her feelings mattered, that her privacy would be respected, and that the adults in her life could work through conflicts without asking her to sacrifice her own well-being for the sake of family harmony. As I rubbed my growing belly, I made a silent promise to my daughter I would never use her as an emotional crutch the way Linda had tried to use her. I would never steal her moments or violate her privacy. I would love her fiercely while still respecting her as an individual person with her own thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. She's going to be so loved, Jake said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. She is, I agreed, and she's going to be respected too. That might be even more important. Emma Rose Matthews was born on a snowy February morning, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. She was perfect tiny fingers that gripped mine with surprising strength, dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around her, and a cry that announced, Her arrival to the world with authority. Jake, and I spent the first few hours alone with her, marveling at this tiny person we created. We took dozens of photos, whispered promises about the life we wanted to give her, and simply existed in the bubble of new parenthood. When we were ready, when we had processed our own emotions and bonded as a family of three, I picked up my phone and called my parents. Mom, I wanted to let you know that your granddaughter is here. Emma Rose, born this morning. We're all doing well. My mother cried. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears of relief that she was hearing this news directly from me instead of discovering it secondhand on social media. Then I called Linda. Linda, I wanted to let you know that Emma is here. She's beautiful and healthy, and we're doing well. You can visit this afternoon if you'd like. Oh, Sarah, Linda breathed. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for including me. Can I... What? It'd be okay if I brought a small gift? Of course. Just remember what we discussed about photos. Please ask before taking any, and definitely ask before posting anything. Absolutely. I remember. Thank you for trusting me with this moment. When Linda arrived that afternoon, she brought a single pink rose and a card. Not a dozen roses that would overwhelm the room, not an elaborate arrangement that would become the focus of attention. Just one beautiful flower and a simple note. She held Emma with reverence, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her granddaughter for the first time. She's perfect, Linda whispered. Absolutely perfect. Would you like me to take a photo of you with her? I offered. Linda looked surprised. Only if you want to. This moment is yours. I'm just grateful to be part of it. I took several photos of Linda holding Emma, and later that evening, Linda sent me a text. Thank you for the beautiful photos. Would it be okay if I shared one on Facebook? I'd like to announce that my granddaughter has arrived, but I want to make sure you're comfortable with that. I looked at the photos. She wanted to share a simple, beautiful image of Linda smiling at Emma. The caption she drafted was perfect. Grateful to meet my granddaughter Emma Rose today. Thank you to Sarah and Jake for sharing this special moment with me. No oversharing, no dramatic proclamations, no attempt to make herself the center of the story. Just genuine gratitude and respect for boundaries. That's perfect, I texted back. Thank you for asking. Over the following weeks, Linda's behavior continued to impress me. She offered to help with meals, but accepted when I said we had it covered. She asked about visiting schedules instead of assuming she could drop by whenever she wanted. She shared photos only with permission and always credited Jake and me as Emma's parents. Most importantly, she never tried to give unsolicited advice or criticism about our parenting choices. When Emma was fussy, Linda didn't immediately suggest what might be wrong. When we made decisions about feeding or sleeping, she didn't offer alternative approaches. She simply supported our choices and celebrated our successes. You're a natural. Mother, she told me one day as she watched me nurse Emma. She's so lucky to have you. It was the kind of comment that would have felt patronizing coming from the old Linda, the one who positioned herself as the expert on all things family-related. But this felt genuine, like a recognition of my competence rather than an evaluation of my performance. 3 months after Emma's birth, I finally shared my first photo on Facebook. It was a simple image of Emma's tiny hand wrapped around my finger, with the caption, 3 months of the most amazing love I've ever known. Emma Rose, you are our everything. The response was beautiful friends and family celebrating with us, sharing in our joy without overstepping or making demands. And Linda's comment was perfect. Beautiful photo of a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing it with us. As I looked at the photo on my phone, I thought about that day 8 months ago when I'd stared at a positive pregnancy test, while my phone exploded with notifications about someone else's announcement of my news. The contrast was stark then. My privacy had been violated and my moment stolen. Now, I was sharing my joy on my own terms, in my own time, with my own words. The woman who had felt powerless and violated was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth and wouldn't accept anything less than respect. The family that had operated on manipulation and boundary violations had transformed into one built on honest communication and mutual respect. Emma would grow up in this new dynamic with a mother who modeled self-respect and a grandmother who understood that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. She would learn that her feelings mattered, that her privacy deserved protection, and that healthy relationships required both kindness and courage. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable behavior. Sometimes protecting your peace requires making others uncomfortable. And sometimes the best way to teach someone how to treat you is to show them what happens when they don single quotes. T. Linda had taught me that lesson, though not in the way she intended. And in learning it, I'd given both of us the chance to build something better, a relationship based on respect rather than control, on love rather than possession. As I held my daughter and watched her sleep, I felt grateful for the journey that had brought us here. Even the painful parts, even the public confrontation, even the family drama, it had all been necessary to create the environment Emma deserved. She would never know a world where her boundaries didn't matter, and that, more than anything else, felt like the greatest gift I could give her.